Welcome back to the Resupply with me, Guy Next Door,
and me, Than,
bringing you your weekly double tap of all things Space Marines and Laser Force. We are without one DK this week for a multitude of reasons. This is why why he's not here. We'll get into that shortly. Probably the biggest one is that he's lazy.
Total fucking wanker when it comes to actually doing work. He's the fucking worst.
He is the
absolutely
worst.
The fucking worst.
I'm pretty sure he doesn't listen to these podcasts either, so yes.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah, it'll be fine. So we're doing an old school resupply today, and it's me and Than, but we do have some guests which we'll get to in a minute. First things first, though, man. You know what? Hey, Than, did you know that it's March? And
I did.
Yeah. Do you know that we're that much closer to nationals?
Funnily enough, the calendar does make that happen as days go by. You do get closer to the whole nationals thing, which if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know the dates, but for the ones of you that don't know the dates yet, we're gonna do some housekeeping and give you all the information anyway, because fuck you, that's why. So Laser Force Internationals will this year be in Auckland, New Zealand, from July 20th to 24th. So for those of you that have already purchased your tickets, good on you.
Bully for you.
Those of you that haven't purchased your tickets yet, maybe get on that. We hear with all the coronavirus bullshit that there's actually deals going on flights, so maybe you catch a break. And for those of you that have bought your tickets already with all the coronavirus stuff that's lowering ticket prices, just turn off your Google Flights tracking on those prices, because I've done that. I've bought my tickets. I don't need to know how much cheaper I could have gotten them had I waited another 6 or 8 weeks. I just don't want to know.
We didn't know that that a major pandemic was going to break out in that time, so you could be forgiven. So again, July 24th, Auckland, New Zealand. We've still got a incredibly large contingent of interested people, which is absolutely fantastic. We're still kind of looking in that potentially 10 to 12 team range, which is just great. I mean, the amount of interest from from the States and from Australia and obviously New Zealand as well, and the hopefully
has been
from Europe as well. We're hoping from Europe.
Well, I know that Marcus from Germany is going to the Australian titles in Perth after. So my assumption would be, if he's doing that, he's probably coming to New Zealand also, but we still need to talk with him directly to confirm that. Yeah,
I'm gonna try and crash on his floor in the hotel. Hopefully that works out for me. I'm moving in, Marcus. You don't know me, you never met me, but I'm moving in. It just happens. It's what we do in New Zealand. We reclaim shit.
You reclaim land. Yeah, that is a fairly accurate statement.
But we won't we won't elaborate further on that one. Okay, so with that all out of the way, actually one last thing. So whilst it's fresh in my mind, we touched on it briefly last week around some of the stuff that Demihawk's doing for the stream this year. He showed me a little preview of something to come. Oh my god, it's pretty awesome. I might tell you about it off air then, but just put a little carrot there for people to kind of be tempted by. It looks dope. It looks really dope. The some of the functionality that he's put in place for this year, pretty cool.
So what you're saying is that over over the years, the bar on the streaming keeps getting raised a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further.
Yeah.
I think last year's Australian titles
so
had put
good.
the bar to its highest point.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that that Greg's goal is to make last year's Australian title streaming just look like a child's toy,
or see it in a more positive way. Take what they did awesomely and make it better.
Yes, but you're way better at saying things in a positive light than I am. I'm
You're the most cheery guy I know. You're a ray of sunshine.
Wow, wow. You really do know me, Steve-O.
Yeah, I've never seen a ray of sunshine turn into a grumpy old man before. So, all right, enough about that bullshit. We've actually you wouldn't be able to tell from how quiet it is, bar me and Than. But we actually have quite a full house today. Whilst we've lost a DK, we've actually reached out and did what Than should have done weeks ago. And
fuck off.
We've reached out, and today we actually have 3 guests on the pod. 2.5. We'll see how Mike goes. But today we would like to introduce from the UK, Poison Ivy, Smally McSmall, and The Brit. Hey guys, what's up?
Hello. Hi, how you going?
Pretty good. You there with us, Mike?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just avoiding speaking when anyone else is to avoid the feedback.
So we got a bit of tech issues. So I'll do my best with the editing hammer in post, and we'll see how we get on. But thanks for joining us, guys. I really appreciate it.
Oh God, so we are literally gonna fix it in post. Oh God.
we sure are. Well, look. Obviously, you guys have been around for a while. Particularly you, Emma. I think you've been around for a long time, as far as I'm aware. Your codename's sort of done the rounds for a number of years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I've been playing since I was about 16.
Right, and
about 14 years now.
Yeah. Okay, so a while.
Just a little while.
Just a little while. How did you guys? How about the like Nikki and Mike? How long have you guys been playing for?
I'm on about 9 years, I think now, but I had a good 6 years of that where I was living a long way from our closest site.
Right.
About 6.5 hour drive, so I was a kind of a half presence at that point.
Right.
So I've been playing. Depends how you define this. So laser tag or laser force. I first probably put on a laser tag pack in the very late 80s. And Laser Force would have been 2005 when I first played in the US Armageddon. That was my first Laser Force experience.
Wow. So, like, you're basically all, like, seasoned pros, more or less.
Not sure if I call us that. Our scene in the UK is a little bit more sparse.
Right. Well, so, obviously, like, I think a lot of, like, old school players will know the Peterborough name, because I think that's probably...
It's one of the oldest sites in the UK.
Right.
And it was one of the first sites that really kind of went hard with the game editor and trying to create new games, and they were very it was very cool in as much as like they would create these games and then they would actually have them up on their website, and so I know there were a few of their game modes, Evolution's the one that I'm thinking of right off the top of my head, that I actually stole and put into the Auckland computer when I was there. Yeah, so you know, that there was definitely as far as like for us on this side of the pond, looking at some of their custom games, like, oh, I'd never thought to actually do that, and then just stealing it and putting it into our system. So some of the customizations, like we really do owe them a debt of actually like sitting down and doing stuff. I mean, it's not to say that there weren't sites in Australia, the U.S. and New Zealand that weren't doing the same thing, but by and large, we weren't posting those updated games out to our website, so nobody outside of the site would have known that they would have existed.
Right. Well, we played a game of Evolution on Tuesday, actually, so timely that's brought up. But yeah, so but you guys have been playing like Space Marines for a long time, right?
Yeah, our Wednesday sessions, our advanced sessions at Peterborough, we tend to run alternating D&D and SM5 all night.
Yeah. Sounds
back
familiar.
In the day when we first started playing, it was D&D all night, and if we managed to get a game of SM5 in, it would take a lot of badgering to get that. I remember the days of you're still the new guard. You guys can play warrior all night, and you don't get a say in what we're playing. But nowadays, we pretty much run the show, and it's alternating D&D SM5 all night.
Right.
So.
We can relate here in Auckland, because that's pretty much like when I first joined and started playing competitively in 2003. We had the same thing. Like most people, I think, preferred to play D&D over SM5.
And in Sacramento, when D&D was first released, it was like we'd play like 7 games of D&D and then 1 game of SM5 at the end of the night. Like that was just how that went. And now, of course, Sacramento doesn't have a site, and I'm in Texas anyway, so I mean, I care, but I don't care. I care because it makes me sad seeing all my friends back in Sacramento not being able to play.
For sure.
But that after we kind of got past that initial point of that sort of ratio, it kind of went back to a lot more Space 5 to D&D.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, the game, like the D&D mode, is the kind of mode that seemingly would appeal to us. I mean, like the fact that you can spellcast off your phaser is like really cool. And I'm sure a lot of people in the scene are no strangers to proper D&D. So yeah, I'm not surprised it's such a popular game mode.
I would also say anybody who hasn't played it since the latest, or not the latest, the update before the latest update, definitely give it another shot, because it has changed spellcasting completely.
It's
and
crazy,
it is
right?
So much better.
Yeah.
So much better.
It took a little while to adjust as a mage, but like for cleric, you can rip through your spell book. It's ridiculous how fast you can cast now. It's nuts.
Yeah, being able to pull up an Inja in the middle of a firefight is huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rather than sort of going in and then going, oh, you've walked around the corner, just shoot me now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Somebody walks up and catches you with your spell book open, if you will.
That's going to be my new phrase instead of being caught with my pants down.
Yeah. Oh, I see you've got me with my spellbook open. What about you, Mike? What site do you play Force out of predominantly?
Well, I play at the Peterborough site. Is my nearest location. I don't actually live that close to it. It's a good.
Oh, he's gone.
He's gone.
Well, that is
I can
unfortunate.
fill in a little bit on that for you. Mike lives about an hour and a half away, I think, in London. So
Wow.
He is he does that drive every other Wednesday for us.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Now that's dedication to the cause.
I am aware that I have to translate a little bit for Americans, because I know that an hour and a half drive is nothing for you guys, but in the UK that's like a third of the country, right?
Yeah, we're about the same in New Zealand, so.
Well, so here's the thing, that like it depends upon where you are in the States as to if an hour and a half is a long drive or not. Like when I lived in California, hour and a half drive, that was like forever. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. That's bullshit. That's ages. Fuck that. Since I've moved to Texas, my idea of what an acceptable drive is, and I know I've said this before on the pod, so if you've heard me say this before, suffer. My idea of an acceptable drive now is like if it's anything under like 2.5 hours, like that's nothing. That's okay. Yeah, I can deal with that. And part of that is just the nature of the traffic in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
I don't want to live in that world, man. It's not where I want to be.
Yeah, well, you live in Devonport that has one way in or out of that peninsula, so you kind of already live in that world. You just don't realize.
Work from home, kids. It's the best way to do it. Mike, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, for some reason the phone just did something very strange and booted me out. But yeah, good hour and a half. Actually, probably more like 2 hours because I have to drive during rush hour, and the myriad of ways I've had to return late at night. Sort of, we finish at 9 p.m. and every time I go back, they seem to close one of the major motorways on the way back. So I end up being diverted off to some little town I've never heard of, and get back at gone midnight. But
that's when you start hearing banjos.
All right, so all of you guys have been playing laser tag in general and Laser Force in specifics for years, and you've had tournament experiences that were not that have been either in the UK or with US Armageddon style, but this year you guys decided to come to the last version of East Coast and experience close to a proper US, Australia, New Zealand style tourney. So what was that experience like for you guys?
It was really great. The big appeal for us for this one, or at least for me, was the random team, or not so random teams, random roles and salary cap meant that it was more accessible for us. Because otherwise, trying to get a whole team together that is willing and able to pay to go abroad to play is a lot more challenging. So it opened it up for us as traveling players a lot.
Definitely, one of the cooler things about this tournament was how it was run with it, and it's the first time we've done specifically with the ranking and salary capping. Definitely something that I feel like we should do again, because it did seem to kind of widen the base of people who could show up. I mean, nobody expected there to be 8 teams showing up to just a random little East Coast tournament, but there it was.
I think it also sets a good template for something that we can do in Australasia as well, because up until this point we only really play Australia and New Zealand only really play together at international tournaments. But if we could work out some sort of ECT type format over 3 days instead of a full week, either early in the year or later in the year after Nats, that might be pretty cool. And doing it in that kind of in that salary cap kind of format might be a really cool way to do it. And it makes for really good fantasy league tournaments as well. So but we've been jerking that topic off for a few weeks, so right on. So how did you guys find kind of the meshing of kind of play styles between how you guys play now and how it's kind of done in the US?
Definitely different.
I'm very wary of doing all the talking, so I'm trying to shut up a bit and let these guys talk.
I had to concentrate very hard on the shoulder because we're very much used to being able to just peek round a wall,
right,
blind fire out. So it was having to remember to make sure we had the sensor on show was challenging, but I did like it by the end of it, I must
Right.
I think having played Syracuse now, I totally get it. We tried a couple of games over here where some of us were showing shoulder. We couldn't get everybody to do it because that's the way it is. But it didn't feel like it gelled so well. And part of that is, I think, the arena construction here.
Right.
A lot of the walls just are built in such a way that there are spots that are very advantageous to hold, and then some that are almost untouchable if you do play with the show a shoulder rule. So I think, especially if not everybody is playing ball, which ours weren't. So I think having played it in Syracuse, it was completely different to how I expected it to be, and it definitely was needed. Having the extra marshals in was really helpful. We don't have anywhere near that level of marshalling, so the fact that every area of the arena was covered was really helpful.
Yeah.
It meant that if you had a rule break, it wasn't contested so much because at least two people had eyes on it.
I think that's a thing that's kind of with the exception of maybe Brisbane and maybe Loveland in Colorado, a lot of sites, don't have the numbers to have 2 teams of 6+ marshals in there. It's only really when you come to a tournament where you start getting, like 12 refs, which can be an adjustment, because you could go from playing each week to, thinking that you were relatively clean into a situation where you're maybe playing in a new arena and playing with more scrutiny because there's more refs around, and finding that, actually I wasn't, my technique is not where I thought it was. And that's from a perspective of people that play with our rule set on the regular. If you're coming from, a scene that doesn't play that way, I could imagine that the adjustment is even more.
Yeah, there was definitely a big adjustment for me, as Than will very well knows and mentioned on a previous podcast. The adjustment to the rules there of showing a shoulder was very difficult. And it was kind of made worse by the fact that in all the socials before, I wasn't really called on it. People weren't telling me you're doing that wrong.
Right.
And there was nobody really observing it and saying you're doing this wrong. You're going to be penalised for doing that tomorrow, which would have been really helpful for me, because it took me the first day to even get a grip on what was going wrong.
Yep.
I think like a benefit to having played a regional tournament like this is making a transition from that to an international tournament means that you've kind of had a competitive environment to adjust to it. And then if you were to come, obviously to this year's nationals, then then the adjustment period is less. But yeah, I remember in the chat you guys bringing up some really good points of, well, it's hard to know how to adjust if you're not aware of what you're doing. And for me, at least, it sort of brought up, well, maybe we should do a better job of communicating with people exactly how their technique can be changed to fit into our rule set if we're playing a tournament, with our rule set, which for us is generally the case.
Just jumping a step back to comment that Nikki and Emma made about trying to play a game at their site where some people were trying to do the international rules, gun plus 1 sensor, and other people were like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. It's to on that point, that's very seldom ever going to go well if you've got people that are basically playing in 2 different rule sets at the same time.
Yeah.
And it is a little sad that people wouldn't at least give it a go. With, it's like if you've got half people saying, hey, let's try this, it would have been cool, I think, if the other half had gone, okay, we think it's stupid, but we'll still give it a go and at least try the thing. But yeah, trying to mesh things like that definitely. We had some challenges with that in Sacramento many years ago. Basically, when I came back from Australia the first time, having been exposed to that rule, and was like, oh my god, this to my mind was such a better way of playing than what we were doing, and yeah, trying to break through that barrier was a multi-year process, but you get that.
Well, I'll just say on that point, I think we needed a bit of experience playing with people following the rule. So an event like this really helps to understand the rule and how it works, and how that affects play, and how the rule is enforced. Because we were trying to play it that way in part just because we wanted practice for this, but there was nobody to tell us if we were or weren't breaking the rules.
Right.
So we didn't know. So there wasn't an easy way to figure it out. So I think that plays a part in it as well, is you've got to actually have had experienced people to play with who can point out the good and bad in your play style. For me personally, I found that actually my kind of handicap was my history of playing Qzar, and the stance that you take when you're playing Qzar is kind of more shoulder forward, which I was doing automatically through having played that for decades. And as a result, I was standing at a particular angle that meant that my shoulder that I thought I was showing was actually hidden behind my head.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a common thing as well for people who play multi-system. You know, at least in my small experience of being around, you know, some of the US Armageddon players. Shout out to R&T.
Yeah, he would have exactly the same issue I did, because he is a Qzar player.
He obviously he's played a few Force tournaments now as well, so I think he has made the adjustment, or at least can make the adjustment. But yeah, you're right. If you've played for decades with a particular stance, making the switch feels awkward, I guess, at best. Not to put words in your mouth, but
I was just going to say, Emma's secondary system is Laser Quest,
right
and that has a very, very different stance. We almost call it the anti-force, because
it is literally the exact opposite.
Yeah, and she's been trying to teach me a few tricks so I don't suck quite as badly at it. And it's things as simple as our stance, where we're holding our phaser pretty central to our chest, is essential, especially if you're playing Shower Sensor. But if you do that in Quest, you're actually making yourself an easier target, because you're boosting how the sensors receive the signal. So you've got to have your phaser as far as possible away from your body. And I'm just like, how do you aim?
And you never stop firing.
Which to somebody who's used to conserving shots is completely alien.
yeah.
So yeah, different systems. If you've got experience playing different systems, it plays into it completely. Because as a Force player going into Quest, everybody's just like, what are you doing?
When I go back to Force after doing Quest, I'm just doing this ridiculous wibbly dance, and everyone's just looking at me.
Yeah,
that's nice, and just shoot me.
Yeah, I'm just like, that's really, really cute missile.
Yeah, I'm gonna try the wiggly dance on Tuesday night.
It's been a long time since I've played Quest, but I do remember just the way the trigger pulls are on Quest, like how, like shift from thumb to fingers back to thumb as your forearm just goes, what the fuck are you doing to me, as you're doing this constant firing and trying to paint shoulder sensors, or my personal favorite with Quest, trying to figure out which sensors on the packs are actually working so you can shoot them.
Oh yeah, that's half the game.
That's my literal job when we do tournament Quest, is I report back to the players who don't suck which sensors are working on which packs.
I think Rusty can relate. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, obviously, like, there's got to be a massive adjustment between the Force rules and seemingly all other laser tag rules, or should I
accurate?
I'll be more specific.
The
Space 5 rule set rather than Force. Sweet. Also, how did the tournament specifically go for you guys?
The arena adjustment was big for me. It was almost as big as adjusting to the rules and the rules changes, because there is one other big rule change that I think Mike will probably want to bring up as well, which is the kind of motion that is allowed and what we would define as dangerous play.
Right.
So what we're used to is you are allowed to walk with pace, but you are not allowed to sprint.
Right.
Because sprinting, for the same reason as jumping, you have 2 feet off the floor, you can't control your movement.
Mm-hmm.
If you're sprinting, you are by definition dangerous play, and you will be penalised for it.
Wow.
So we move at a pretty decent pace. We still manage it. My husband's probably one of the fastest players in the UK, and he goes some without running. But yeah, some of the movement in that arena, we would have been dishing out 20 penalties a game.
Yeah.
So that was a big adjustment for us.
Syracuse is a little unique in how some of the dangerous play stuff gets called or doesn't get called, because it is because it does have typically such wide lanes, basically, and that's the wrong word, but it's the one that's coming to mind right now. It's a little more forgiving of speed, because there are definitely things that don't get called in Syracuse that 100% would get called in, say, Detroit, or would have been called in Sacramento, because it's a tighter maze and there's less margin for error. Having said that, I did like the one penalty that I actually called during the tournament was a dangerous play, because someone was basically sprinting with their head down. It's like, no, you can't even see. You can't even see to know what's potentially going to happen. So have a penalty.
I think you're right too. Yeah. Like that maze definitely lends itself to sprinting around, because it's all single level. It's massive. Like the actual floor area is huge. But you do have these wide, as you say, lanes to kind of run up and down. So whilst you can sprint, I think most people that have control over their body would be able to either stop or pivot or, juke or do something to avoid a collision should somebody pop around a corner. But that shit don't fly in most other arenas. Like if you tried that, in ours or Detroit or, I couldn't see anyone sprinting around the old Sacramento maze. Maybe across the top, but any arenas with ramps, I think sprinting up ramps takes a lot out of you. So
every arena in the UK pretty much has ramps.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but the thought of running up and down ramps sucks.
Especially, we have, Huddersfield, Bradford, and one of the 2 ramps in Peterborough are all crazy steep. Like before I remember we were talking about in Bradford, before they put the grip down on the ramps, you literally had to clip on and pull yourself up the ramp. Yeah.
Oh wow!
It is that steep.
What?
So the idea of sprinting that is just I probably would have died a long time ago playing this sport.
So you need a Sherpa to get to your resupply.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Bradford arena definitely. There's a few arenas in my Qzar arena. We have ramps, and there's been certain games where my job has pretty much been running up and down the ramp the whole game, and I pretty much died at the end of it. Half an hour, well, it's 24 minutes of running up and down a ramp.
You got them sick
quad
muscles.
I'm not the most in shape guy, so.
Ramps don't bother me too much, but doing lengths of the Syracuse arena got me though.
Oh yeah.
Just because
going that far.
Yeah, it's huge, right? It's a massive arena.
Yeah, to cross to either side, and then it's like, run back, get resupplied, right back up.
Our arenas are pretty big, but they are, in terms of the space that is actually utilised, that is played as a routine bit. Certainly for Peterborough, upstairs is God. So you pretty much vacate downstairs as soon as you've got your neutral base down there, and you get the hell out of Dodge.
Right.
Because it's just way too open down there to be shot from upstairs.
Yeah.
So the arena in Peterborough is probably comparable in size in terms of footprint to Syracuse, but only half of it is used in game.
Right. How good is it running on a cloud though? That foam floor, oof, delicious.
See, I have a slightly different viewpoint on this because I fractured my elbow playing Armageddon a couple of years ago, and I did it in the section of arena that was carpeted. So I can honestly say that I've hurt myself less in concreted arenas than I have in carpeted arenas.
Yeah. We have sections of our floor that we use like this weird carpet tiles, and because it's 20 years of Laser Force in Auckland, the floor panels periodically come off, and you can go for a wee trip if you're not careful, but that should be sorted by Nats, folks. We'll get that sorted. Yeah.
I guess the real question for Nats is, are we going to be able to play barefoot because it is New Zealand?
Hey, look, we're not all hillbillies here, right? What I'm more
met you?
I have all my teeth. What I'm more concerned about is the amount of people playing in their boxer shorts. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah, that used to be a staple of Rusty's, the old peekaboo shorts. So, what's kind of next for you guys? Like, have you got tournaments on the horizon, or stuff in your local scenes?
We've got nothing, I think, planned at the moment. I think if there is something coming up, it will probably be run at one of the northern sites. Paul will put something on. Cool. He's looking at testing out at the moment. The event he ran in
was it November
Christmas,
or December?
I think it was just after Christmas.
Yeah.
He just got a second license for Huddersfield, so that he could test out the back half of the arena, so he could keep the front half open to the public while running a tournament in the back half, because Huddersfield is a really, really long arena, and floor space wise, it's I think one of the biggest arenas I've ever seen. It's huge, so you can easily play SM5 in half of it, and that's more than big enough.
Wow.
So I think he was looking at trying to do that as a test. So hopefully, what that was a test for will emerge soon, and we'll look at playing something up there. But other than that, it's only Armageddon on the scene for us at the moment.
When is that?
It is August. I'm not entirely sure of the dates. Mike?
Yeah, I should know these off the top of my head, really, shouldn't I? As,
you really should.
I do organise it. It's it's the middle of August, and I'm sure I've got an event up for it.
14th to the 16th, 17th at the minute.
Yeah, there's a US one at the beginning of July, so over the 4th of July weekend, and the UK one. I am trying to figure out and confirm the dates, because we've got. I've currently kind of put it down as a Friday to Monday. It's not going to be 4 days. It's going to be 3 days, but somewhere in that 4-day period.
I'm also keeping quite a close eye on what Darmstadt are running, because we did head over there. I think was it August?
That was August
year?
again. It weren't long before again.
And yeah, I'm keeping an eye on them, because they seem to have quite a burgeoning scene over there.
That was good fun.
It was good fun.
Their
arena is actually quite like Syracuse. It's very flat, very open.
More square.
A bit more square, and more half heights. Lots and lots of half height walls.
Right.
But plays quite similarly, and I should imagine the play style would translate quite well.
Yeah. There is also, did I see that there's some sort of tournament happening in Amsterdam, right?
Prague.
Prague.
There's something going on in Prague. It's not SM5 though.
Oh, okay. That's a shame. One of our expat guys, Virus, he lives in Amsterdam, so I think I'd send it through to him, and he might end up having a bit of a tiki tour, so we might have to get him on the mic and see how it went. But it's good to see being a Laser Force purist, it's good to see Force, having a few different events in Europe. And maybe it's something that's happened a lot in the past and we're just ignorant and don't know about it. But, it's cool that it's kind of... It looks to be that most Force things now are becoming global, right? People in scenes across the world hear about them and get the opportunity to go play if they're kind of relatively near.
I mean, there is an explosion of sites in Germany. There are tons of Force sites in Germany, so the idea of them building up a scene is really, really exciting. I've heard rumours of another site opening up in the UK at some point as well. We don't know which one, so it's great to see a growing presence here in the UK. Unfortunately, our site Peterborough doesn't seem to have any kind of stake in an SM5 scene at the moment. It doesn't really seem interested in putting something competitive on, but I know Paul definitely is up north, so
it's a shame because obviously the Peterborough site is, as you guys say, been around for forever, so it would be awesome to kind of bring that site, but maybe all UK sites into the international fold. We'll see how the next kind of couple of years shakes out when it comes to that sort of thing. I would be very keen to come over to the UK for a tournament in a couple of years if coronavirus permits. Was there anything else that we wanted to touch on?
Do we need to explain what Armageddon is, or has that been covered before?
We've covered it in previous pods, but there's no reason why we can't recover it. Do you want to give us a sort of quick recap as to how Armageddon works for anyone that's sort of new to the pod or new to the scene?
Yeah, sure. So Armageddon started in the States back in 2000, and has been running every year except one since. And it's a multi-system laser tag tournament where teams play each other on every system in the tournament. So you'll get to play them on Laser Force, but also Laser Quest, Qzar, and Tron, and a whole load of others, Laser Storm. So there's lots of different systems, and the idea is to prove who's best at laser tag rather than just who's best at one particular system. And it's a lot of fun. I'd say it's a far less serious tournament than Nats would be for any individual system, but you do have very competitive teams in there, but at the same time you're going around together, staying in hotels together and getting drunk together, as well as a bit of laser tag thrown in.
That's what we like to hear.
Wait, there's laser tag at Armageddon? I thought it was just the drinking.
Do they still play Photon? Is that something that people still kind of play on the rig, or is that long dead?
So there's one site that I'm aware of that has Photon equipment, and that's the Maryland site. It's a Lasertron venue now, but they have Photon, a full set of Photon equipment, and they run a thing called Phocon, sort of every so often, where they get all the old Photon players together to play a tournament. So as far as I'm aware, that's the only site that could actively run any games. And I know that there was Redneck Tech had hoped to bring the US Armageddon over to that arena and include Photon in this year's US Armageddon. Unfortunately, he couldn't secure the venue because there's some kind of there's uncertainty around release renewal, I believe, or something along those lines. So until that's resolved, he couldn't commit to a venue that may or may not get its lease renewed.
Sure. Last thing you want to do is bring people over, for just drinking.
Yeah, you got to have a pretend purpose to be there.
Part of the appeal of Geddon is getting to play systems we don't get to touch very often. I mean, can you imagine if we could play Force on old Gen 5 packs again and try them out and just think... Try to refresh those skills. See, I came back to my Gen 7s and I was so happy. I could dodge missiles again instead of being a missile bait trophy winner.
I love me some Gen 8. I'm here now.
Already.
Man, I gotta admit, I love playing on Gen 8s. I'd never played on them before this tournament, and neither had Emma. And it was great, but it's so totally different. And I gotta admit, I got back to my Gen 7s, and I was like, I'm home.
Yeah, I'm sad.
So we got our first Gen 8 experience in Brisbane in 2018 for the 30-year anniversary internationals. Basically, it was the 30th year that Brisbane had been open, and so all of Brisbane had been playing on Gen 8s because they were doing all the alpha and beta testing, and then we show up for a tournament. It's like, okay, we're playing on Gen 8, which we knew a couple weeks / months in advance, but I had this very clear memory of like the first time I looked at a Gen 8 pack going, what the fuck is this? And then after playing a couple of games on them, being like, oh my god, these are amazing,
glorious.
Just because I started on Gen 4, which
you old.
Yes, I don't think there's ever been any argument about that. So going from the original one-handed phaser that was supposed to have a sensor in the tip of the gun, but that sensor didn't often survive public or league players, through to G5. Okay, really G5, G6, G7, very incremental with the upgrades, and then stepping to G8, and it's like, oh my god,
the future is now.
Pretty much.
So to touch back on Photon, I have a boxed Photon home system sitting on my shelf, and I've never actually played it, but it's got the helmets, and I might have to bring it down for nationals, and we'll have a run around in the in the Force Arena with these home Photon suits.
Laser Force owes a debt to Photon.
Absolutely.
In the fact that the first Laser Force system looked remarkably similar.
Yeah, for sure.
I had a helmet.
Yeah,
I've seen it in the Laser Tag Museum.
Yeah, we don't talk about that. or rather, we don't talk about that in any official capacity. How's that?
Yeah, if you ever make your way to the Brisbane site, they've got sort of a mini Laser Force history museum there, and you can see one of those packs with the helmet on display, and it's amazing. I can only imagine like the amount of danger that would come out of somebody sprinting around the Syracuse arena wearing a helmet. That prospect terrifies me. Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
Well, the Photon rules allowed full out sprinting.
I mean, that seems safe.
They're tournament rules where you can run. Well, you got a helmet and a face guard on. So
I mean, that's American football rules, right?
you have a helmet, you have a face guard, and you have a built-in game mechanic that it doesn't matter if you're chasing somebody, you can only shoot them 3 times before you have to shoot something else anyway. So so you've got all these things that kind of simplify life.
Maybe I'll take a photo of the system that I have, and I'll edit it into the pod so people can have a look-see.
I was just going to say, the other thing is that you had to be really fit to run in Photon, because back then the batteries, it was a battery belt made of lead acid batteries that you'd strap on. So the ability to run, really, you had to be really fit.
The prospect of running up ramps wearing a battery pack, hard pass. But if I could play laser tag and potentially jumpstart my vehicle at the same time, I'm all for that. We'll roll with that. Cool. Well, was there anything Laser Force centric or Space 5 centric we want to kind of finish out on?
I think the only other thing that really occurred to me was how differently the arena played to what we're used to because of the multi-levels. And that's the only thing that I kind of wanted to bring up is we're so used to looking for shots coming from up and shots coming from down. The way angles play into things in Syracuse, it's all about people who are popping shots off, and you're just like, where the hell did that come from?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, it took a lot of adjusting to how to assault the different sections of the arena, because I will own my missile bait trophy with pride. I got missiled to death day one because I just didn't know where the hell they were coming from.
Right.
And it was, and then I started trying to dodge stuff and realizing, hang on, I'm on Gen 8, so that does not work.
Yeah.
But yeah, learning the arena was huge. I think,
and remembering we had a screen.
Yeah.
So long. People are like, how many shots you got? I'm like, I don't know. And they're like,
yeah, how close are you to another nuke? No idea. Look at the gun.
Like, oh yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because we so in Auckland everything is mostly linear as well. Everything sort of comes from that single plane, so we're not really having to worry about stuff coming from above or below. So for the longest time, when we would travel specifically to Brisbane, because their site is most certainly multi-level, yeah, it's such a different, like, we can relate because it's such a different way of thinking about where shots are coming from. If they're coming from above you, if they're coming from below you, taking, adding to the playing. The fields of view is such a massive adjustment period. In fact, I think it's taken maybe 3 nationals for me to kind of adjust to play in the Brisbane arena. So I can kind of relate, but in the opposite way, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Very defensive cubbies were also very different for us. We haven't got anything like that certainly in Peterborough Arena, and I can't think of anything in Huddersfield or Bradford either.
There's pretty much nowhere to
so
bunker down.
When you talk about bunkering resup, going into queues, immediately that red resup are going to Edor and green resup are going to go to that corner near the entrance.
Yeah.
And you just do not have that certainty going into our games.
It could be anywhere.
Because if there's a corner that's looking even remotely defensible, certainly what they've done in Peterborough is they've stuck tinfoil up so you can bounce shots into it. They actually actively discourage any kind of bunkering like that. For us, it's just like, trying to assault that corner is hell on earth.
Right.
We've got one, but I don't think it will last long.
Oh, it's not going to last long. People know about it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. It's a pod exclusive. Yeah, okay, so we're kind of similar, I guess, in Auckland. So we have one decent resupply point, but basically our resupply points have multiple entryways. In fact, our best resupply point has 3 ways that you can get in there. It is upstairs, so you have to attack from ramps. But same sort of thing, like it's kind of expected that teams will go to 1 or 2 places. So I can kind of imagine that, trying to deal with... It would be hard for us to go the other way, you know what I mean? It's hard for people to adjust to. We kind of have to resupply everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, but the other thing with the Auckland maze as well, because of the adjustable doors that are in it, you can turn Auckland from a run and gun, no real super defensible positions into a hyper defensive. There's 5 relatively solidish, 5 pretty solid resupply spots just by flipping a couple of the doors around for those of you for those of you listening on the pod that have never played in Auckland, which is probably a chunk of you. There's 7 different doorways, and there's 3 doors that you can move around to those 7 doorways.
Although that's kind of changed now, because they reclaimed part of the arena for the foyer.
That's right.
And turned it into a party room. So like a corner has kind of been taken out where there were, I think, 3 of those doorways.
So So ignore me because I haven't been to my old home maze in 10 years, and listen to Steve-O because he still plays.
But there is the possibility of closing sections of the maze up to create those one way in, one way out resupply points. But we haven't played that way since we were training for Ballarat, where same sort of thing. It was always 2 entrance resupply points.
It changes the game massively.
For sure.
Because we're like I said, we're used to having to think on the fly with our resup, because I know we've been chased out of this spot that has 5 entryways. So let's go find a spot with 4 entryways and immediately have the same thing done to us again.
Yeah.
So we're as a result used to shorter games because we elim
right
a lot. So going into queues where pretty much every game, I think 8 out of 10 games went to time.
Yeah.
That just doesn't happen for us.
Yeah. Someone's getting their ass kicked.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. From how you're describing the Peterborough maze, it definitely sounds like one of those mazes where it's literally the first team to make a mistake is probably going to die because they've made the mistake, their resupply is split, they're getting pounded on, and they never get a chance to set back up. Would that be a fairly reasonable thing to take away from that?
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Everyone's just throwing haymakers, right? Like,
yeah.
Which kind of makes for some interesting play. Like we game, to do the comparison, we have similar games in Auckland, or at least the start of games generally go that way, where both teams are throwing these massive haymakers for position, and it's the first one to kind of break is usually the one that's gonna lose.
Certainly at Bradford Arena, because of the unevenness between downstairs and upstairs, there's a significant advantage to holding upstairs again.
Right.
They had to move the start point so both teams now start upstairs.
Oh.
What that means is that you are literally, if you've got a fast player, you can be in their resup in 4 seconds.
Is that where that tournament at Christmas was?
That was Huddersfield. That was back half of Huddersfield.
Right.
But yeah, even Huddersfield, I mean, I think you can probably get from, if you're playing half of the arena, which is what we normally do, you can get, if you've got a quick player, you can get there in at least 8 seconds. It changes things in terms of how you end up setting out. I had games in Syracuse as a medic where I had 60 seconds go over, and I'm like, I've got 10 lives left. How has that happened?
Yeah.
And it's happened because you had a positional setup that made it really challenging for people to get into you, or your team was doing such a great job of pinning the other team back, they just were never able to push forward. I
love when my team does that.
It's pretty awesome.
I was wedged in my little corner. I didn't see a soul for most of the game. I got nuked a bit, and that was about it. It was just I can't imagine it. It's just I can't imagine that happening here. Doesn't matter how we would do it. I can't imagine not having a commander pounding on me within the first 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's less favourable.
I was just going to mention one little thing. So there was one thing about the rules and an unintended consequence that I didn't appreciate when I first sort of reading the rules is one thing, seeing them in practice is a different one. So I got caught out by my commander nuke chaining about 4 or 5 nukes in a row.
Oh, I was the one.
I casually walk down a corridor, spy a player going into a cubby, follow them in via a different route than they took, shoot them, and then get penalised for following, not realising that there is tracks everywhere.
Yeah.
Because of the nuke chain and the fact that player never came up
having so many
for the whole
marshals
duration.
So many marshals that can see routes you didn't see as a player. It's huge.
Yeah, and Mike, I think we had this conversation really briefly at ECT about this or about something else. I know we had a few different conversations at the time, but and tournament player who says they've never been done for a chase that they didn't know about because of a track being set. Anybody who says that that's never happened to them is lying,
or they're not trying hard enough,
or they're not trying hard enough because sometimes yes, I mean it is one of those kind of unintended consequences. But believe me when I say we've tried rewriting the rule to eliminate that, and this was an effort that was like early mid 2000s, and so it has been a while, but like every time we changed wording to try to not screw people unintentionally, it opened up bigger loopholes to really get screwed. So yeah, it sucks when you get done for a chase when you had no idea that this person set this really cool track because of these multiple nukes. But sometimes
I think it was 5 or 6 nukes.
Okay.
That was Cody on a rampage, wasn't it?
Yeah. So literally like 30 seconds passed, and the trail was still there because they hadn't still reacted.
Yeah.
Yeah, not realizing that at the time.
It becomes.
That was one of the penalties I got was a chase that I didn't know a track had been set, and I ran into the red base. And for those of you who've never played in Syracuse, too bad. Ran into the red base from the E-door side and shot a person and immediately got dinged. And I stopped and I looked at the ref and I'm like, he set that whole track, didn't he? The ref just nods like, cool. Just turn around, walk away. It's like there's it happens. Which is
one reason why I'm very glad that the 0 point penalty rule has come into effect, because it becomes more of a like a foul in basketball. So it's you've done something unintentional, and as a result, you get put down and your momentum has stopped, and it's given the other player an opportunity to run away or whatever. I guess I guess as you go forward, your gameplay changes where you take those things into consideration. Okay, my nuke is dropped. I haven't really seen where that player's come up, has been to or set that track. I need to sort of proceed with a little bit of caution. And yeah, finding that balance, I guess, is a bit of an art form. Because it can come back to sort of bite you.
On the subject of following trails, there is a rule that you guys have that is permissive that we don't, and that's the not targeting. So you can follow the player and say not targeting Emma, whatever, and go in, and that we don't have in the UK.
Yeah.
And it makes it's really hard remembering the extra rules on top of. But at one point in one game, I'm almost missed a base as a medic because I didn't think I could follow a player who'd fled into green base.
Right.
And I completely forgot I could say not targeting and go in there, shoot the base. Just after our nuke had gone.
It would go a completely different way, and then it's like, why didn't you just not target them?
I felt like an absolute moron for doing that, but it's just one of those rules that is so alien to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and at the same time, like you said, I mean, if it's not something that you're used to, and as a side note, that just seems super weird to me that like one person can essentially freeze an entire zone from multiple people, but that's neither here nor there. But again, that's just one of those differences. But yeah, if you're not used to a thing, and then you're in the middle of something trying to do the thing, sometimes those things are just going to kind of slip the mind because your muscle memory isn't really there for it. It's thinking something else.
It was really funny in that situation because I was focusing so hard on what I wasn't meant to be doing that I forgot there were things that I could be doing that I'm not usually allowed to. I was just like, don't blind fire, don't do this, don't do that. Oh wait, I could have actually done that. That was really stupid.
And a lot of this stuff comes from time, like It's basically just, you know, the learned skill. Same with I suppose the pop shots is most definitely a learned skill. That if, you know, say I was to come into I actually have been in the position where I've played a tournament that had that rule set where you could do the pop shots. It's such a steep learning curve to change, you know, the way that you've been playing for a decade or, you know, however long.
If you had a audio recording of my train of thought throughout the entire tournament, all you would have got is, you got to show a shoulder, you got to show a shoulder, you got to show a shoulder.
I was the same.
And the
Every
second I stopped doing it, I blind fired, and at one point I was probably 2 foot from the marshal.
Right.
It was Cody and Red Bay. I literally held up my face and it was just like, penalise me, that was my fault.
I did exactly the same thing. I just, without thinking, went, oh, there's a player over that wall, and just put my gun up in the air and fired, and just turned around, the marshal just shot me.
Yeah. Which again is like, I'm really thankful that 0 point penalties have become a thing, because it's not a thing that people do necessarily on purpose. Like, people aren't out there to cheat. It's just for a lot of people, it's you know, that's their first nature, right, or second nature, whatever. Yeah, so being penalized without like having points penalized, I think is definitely a positive thing. And it gives people an opportunity. Yeah, for sure. And it gives people an opportunity to adjust, or hopefully adjust, assuming that they're being told what it is that they're doing wrong. Which going forward hopefully becomes something that people are better at doing.
Yeah, I think that would be really good. Our marshals here, like I said, they're few and far between. But when they call a penalty, they'll tell you what it's for. It'll be penalty blind fire, penalty gun jamming, and you'll know immediately what your mistake was.
Right.
You can argue it later. Doesn't matter if you think you didn't do it, whatever. Sort that shit out in the pack room.
Yeah.
But it's at least you then know what you did, so you don't do it again.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
had one game where I weren't aware what I'd actually done until afterwards. It turned out I'd unintentionally done a jump to the side, thinking I was sidestepping.
Oh, right.
I have a penalty against my name that I still have no idea what it was for now.
It's for being a foreigner. No.
Yeah,
I think you've got one of mine. I think I'm down one.
Yeah. We think we on a side note, we think that I've got one of Emma's penalties because she remembers having one more than she did, and I definitely don't think I've got it.
Sharing is
I'm not
caring,
having it back.
right?
It's yours now.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean some of the penalty resolution at ECT. I mean, there were definitely things that could have been done better. As far as that goes, like little things like it probably should have been that, even though, you know, the entire teams that had just played were supposed to go in and refs, the captains should probably not have gone into ref until the penalty resolution had been done and they'd been told, and then they could go in and ref. Like that's one of those tweaks that in hindsight is like, oh, that's so obvious, we should have done it that way. But
that's what we're aiming for nationals as well, to kind of take that and learn from it. So there'll be an opportunity for people. It'll most probably be play sit ref sit situation. So, you know, players will be sitting with their refs from their game, and can hopefully get some clarification if need be as to what happened, without it affecting the schedule or, you know, the next match or game that's going in. So that's one takeaway that we're looking to implement for nationals this year.
We also have a remotely funny story about one of our warnings during the tournament. So we're used to a rule for swearing is legal as long as it's not directed at another player. So just muttering a swear word under your breath or talking shit to your teammate is fine.
Yeah.
But the second you start directing that at somebody, that's the problem.
Right.
So day one, Emma and I got a warning for swearing after one of the games, and we were sat trying to work out what on earth we'd said, because we couldn't remember anything going on. And at one point, it just kind of dawned on me that at one point I'd gone, "Where the fuck's the resup?" and Emma had responded with,
"I don't fucking know."
and that was our warning. So,
but did you say it like
racking our brains?
Did you say it quietly?
No.
Oh. Okay, well,
you screamed it.
Yeah, right on.
But it was just so reflexive. I mean, I'm blaming my British heritage for that. That's just...
Look, as a Kiwi, I wish that I could, take the same kind of route. I do like saying the F word. It has a certain punch,
You can say it on here. We're not regulated by it in the FCC. You can say fuck.
Oh, I know. I've heard you guys swear like sailors on the pod before. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it.
Oh no way. Certainly not.
No, it was all fam.
Yeah, it was definitely all fam.
Yeah. To be fair, generally mostly me. If you're hearing swearing on the pod, 9 times out of 10, it's me.
Yeah, it's usually something like,
okay with that.
"Fucking young people, get this crap out of my yard," or something to that effect, right? You old bastard.
Get the fuck off my lawn, I think, is usually more what it is than anything.
Well, look, so this we've been gone now for a while, so we should probably end it. Did you guys have any final thoughts? Mike, we haven't heard from you in a while. Do you have anything that you want to kind of bring up, or?
I would say overall, the experience was good once I'd figured out sort of how to not cheat by accident, and that made for a much more enjoyable sort of second half of the tournament for me.
Right.
It's certainly it certainly kind of was enjoyable, and I think the fact that our team actually fixed a lot of issues that we had in our sort of early games and won far more than we were expecting was made it all the better. Although we messed up a few bits in the last few games, but as a first tournament, this was ideal because a reasonably level playing field between all the teams. There was always it meant that we weren't going to go in game after game and get railed on. It was going to be, we have a chance to win pretty much every game we're going to play.
Yeah.
So as a first tournament, that makes a big difference because you're going in there and they're competitive games. So they're actually a lot more enjoyable than ones where you just walk all over people or get walked over. So I think that side of it was the thing that attracted me to it, and I really enjoyed.
I might just interject then with just to say how friendly and welcoming people were.
Yeah, everybody was fantastic.
We really felt welcome.
Well, look, I want to thank you guys for like coming on and putting some voices to the names, because obviously it's been a while, and it's nice to see the two scenes starting to merge into one, and hopefully we get a bit of a UK contingent at a certain upcoming international tournament. That'd be kind of nice.
I don't think it's going to happen this year, but I've got high hopes for next.
Yeah, so if it ends up being in Utah, I think there's a bit of a contingent that's going to come next year, so maybe we aim for that.
Oh yeah,
that could be.
That's much more doable for us. That's not spending a tenth of my salary on flights.
Yeah, but once you get here, you'll live like queens, so
What would be good from my perspective is if there's an event in the US, is to have it adjacent to Armageddon, so I can do both, one after the other.
Yeah, that's like a benefit for this up. Well, sort of. It's obviously after nationals this year. There's the Aussie titles, which are being held in Perth.
Yep.
And I know that there are some traveling players, as you said. Dan Marcus is making his way across to Perth after nationals, assuming that he is still coming.
And so are Beans and Sanch.
Yeah.
Are also going to be headed that way as well.
I would imagine there's a few of the Australians that'll probably make their way across as well. Maybe, we'll see. But yeah, thanks guys for coming on and speaking your piece. We'll maybe have to do it again sometime soon and delve a little deeper into some of the rule stuff or whatever else we kind of, wax poetic about. But yeah, thanks again for coming on.
For having us.
Thank you.
All right, well, for this week, I've been Guy Next Door.
And I've been Than.
Always remember to backtrack, kids. We will see you next week.